What's up, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more Propagandhi. We're going to listen to another tune from their opening album, How to Clean Everything. We're going to listen to a tune called Showdown. Now, I've mentioned this tune in a couple other Propagandhi reactions from this album, which, as I keep saying in a number of reactions also, is maybe the most seminal or influential album in my personal history, in that it really took me to another level in terms of my interest in music and underground music that you wouldn't necessarily hear on the radio. It inspired me to start reading a lot of nonfiction, which made me come to not only become more erudite over time, but also to develop strong values about certain issues and so on. So again, this album was pivotal in my personal history. I've reacted to most of the album so far. This might be the only tune I haven't reacted to yet. And again, I did mention it in a couple other reactions, and the reason I mentioned it, not only do I enjoy it sonically, it just has a real it sounds like the best of this album. I've mentioned it before. Over time, Propagandhi has sort of evolved their sound, and they have a bit more of a melodic and metal influenced hardcore sound now, whereas the sound on this album, and to a lesser extent their second album, it has this almost skate punk. Now often when that phrase is used, it refers to punk rock that it's fast and it's hard, but it's not necessarily about political or social critique or commentary. So even the label skate punk, I think, is a bit of a misnomer here, but I get why people have used that, because it has a very kind of aggressive, fast, and raw sound. And this, I think, is one of the better sonic compositions on the album in terms of just the unfolding of the tune and its different sonic elements. But it's interesting to me. I don't listen to radio hip hop, but I remember a friend of mine played me a track by Drake, which I think is called "Life Is Good," and I remember I was confused because it sounded like two different tracks. It sounded wait, so the beat just completely changed, and now the other guy's coming in okay. And that was the reason he played it for me, because it was funny to him that it was they couldn't agree on a beat. It was well, I want to use this beat, well, I want to use this one, well, I guess we'll both use them both in the same song. I feel this track is the lyrical equivalent to that, in the sense that John K. Sampson, in the two albums that he was on for Propagandhi, didn't get a whole lot of songs where he's singing or he wrote them into the albums. I think this is the only case on this album where it's there's a full verse where it's just his writing. Anchorless is a song on the Less Talk More Rock album. I did react to that one already. Check it out if you're interested. But yeah, he obviously has a different writing style, less overtly political, less muckraking and sort of dissentful, and more about psychology and personal insecurities and so on. And then Chris often is writing scathing political critiques and sort of chastising revanchist and conservative elements in society and so on. And so this tune, the first verse, well, actually there's an introduction which is sung by Chris, and it is very sort of political, and it's about, when you're born into this world, you're sort of configured to be just another pawn in the system and just to not make waves, and you're sort of set up to go through life the way you're supposed to. And he's saying I don't want to be that, I don't want to be part of that, and indeed I never have and I never will pledge allegiance to anything, a flag, a country, or whatever. I don't just pledge blind allegiance to something. I'm willing to support something over time if it becomes clear that its values are in the right place and it's trying to live by them and practice them and so on. He doesn't say all this, but he does make the point that I never have and I never will pledge allegiance. So the beginning, it gives you the vibe of Chris's contribution to the song, but then the first verse is by Sampson, and it's about, again, personal insecurities. There's a line about looking in the mirror and all you see is an exterior of lies, and there's also this this feeling that you can't shake, and conversations colored blue, which is funny because if you look in the liner notes, Chris writes a note pointing to that line, the conversations colored blue, and he writes in a little handwritten note, "Do you understand?" "Nah, me neither." Which I really was amused by as a teenager. But yeah, it's about essentially insecurities and feeling that you're not presenting your true self when you're trying to make connections with maybe romantic connections, another person. And it gets to the end of the verse and it's like, you know, girls with the greenest eyes, the first time you have kissed, and our quiet, softest sighs. Well, this is a song for all of those who shot and missed. So it's about, you know, trying to make those connections, trying to like find emotional fulfillment in life through another person and not being able to do it, falling short, not having the relationship work, or so on. So yeah, it's like that is a very different vibe from either the intro or Chris's verse, which is about, again, being born, tagged, tattooed, and pacified, you know, put through the system, and, you know, he wants to like take action, but you've taught me not to do that. You've tried to encourage me to be a pawn and so on. Well, guess what? That lesson and that sort of mode of behavior on the part of me, that's not going to last that long. That's gonna go away now that I've sort of taken control of myself. So it's sort of like his verse is a coming of age, like political manifesto, which is funny because the first track on the album is called Anti-Manifesto. But yeah, it's sort of a political statement of purpose that I'm not going to be a pawn. I'm not just going to go through this, like, you know, conformist, constricted life where you know, go through public school and you're taught just to kind of learn, you know, the sort of official story of history and not really make waves. And, you know, you're supposed to get your college position and then that'll straight lead into your corporate job, and, you know, just go through life and just kind of nod your head and be part of this all, and, you know, don't rock the boat or get off the train. And he's saying, I'm very much not going to do that. And indeed, by the end of the song, and in the same musical rhythm that you got that line from John about, you know, girls with the greenest eyes and so on, Chris makes the point that, you know, those who realize these things, those who kind of want to not be part of this and stand against it, they're often quickly gagged and bound. But you know what? I'm going to burn this whole fucking system down. So again, it has the, like, you know, very early in their career. This is 93, I believe they're in their early 20s at this point. So it feels maybe like a song differently than Chris would write today, as I'm thinking about Adventures in Zoochosis, a very different song. And indeed, it's almost like that song is like, he's still the young person that the older Chris in Adventures in Zoochosis wants to provide an opportunity that maybe, you know, I'm stuck here. This is just how I've lived my whole life. Maybe you can still get out. So I'm going to tackle the keepers for a minute, try to get out that door and, you know, make that change, you know, tear that whole system down. I feel like this song is like, you know, 20 something years earlier. But that's like the Chris of Adventures in Zoochosis was maybe thinking about young folks like himself in 93. So let's get to it. This very lopsided or like dichotomous song. It's called Showdown, although it said in parentheses GE/P. I've never quite understood that aspect of the title. If you do know exactly what that's about, let me know. I've always just referred to the track as Showdown, but yeah, this is Propagandhi, Showdown, parentheses GE/P, and they had, you know, periods after them, so it's like an acronym in both cases. In any case, from their 1993 album, How to Clean Everything. And suddenly I realized I didn't have the file queued. I apologize. Give me 5 more seconds here. And away we go.
Spoken minds too clearly as some fundamental rights inherent not as thoughts but men. I do not require a gauge for freedoms of speech, cause I never asked to be a citizen. Never will pledge allegiance.
Just a great riff.
Waking up each morning with confusion in my eyes, wind is biting through the wave below. See my the greenest eyes, first time you have kissed, our quiet softest sighs, for all of those who shot and missed.
And then Chris just marauders into the track.
Welcome this world in good identity, voice and tattoo pacified, generously bestowed my life and feelings replete with arbitrary values to ascribe. Nothing I can tell you, there's nothing I can say, stunning conversations that's a thought, completely free and liberty guaranteed, unless cause you decide I'm not, but
I'll be resigned to falling right behind you.
Tension in the air, I cannot guess what the fuck am I accomplishing? Absolutely nothing. Always was a boring time for action, which you taught me to be a bun.
It won't last long.
Those who see through the lies are quickly gagged and bound. Ambition realized, tear the whole fucking thing down.
And then the harmony. Come on, give me the harmony.
I was right behind you. I was right behind you.
Oh, this album. Again, it is not the sound of Propagandhi today, that is entirely fair to say, but this album will always be very special and nostalgic for me. It's just, I think it is a great album for what it is. Again, I get that in now, many years later, 30 years later essentially, that Propagandhi doesn't play tunes like this, and maybe, it's not their favorite to like go back and to revisit these songs necessarily. But again, I think it's a great opening album, and it was an album that again just blew up my mind and brought me to so many other things over time. So yeah, I'll always love this album. I think this is a fantastic tune, though again it is sort of weird the way that they didn't make it all a Chris song or all a John song. It feels just like it could have gone on for another verse with John's like psychological insecurity and sort of the weird world of human relations and what it feels like to reach out and make yourself vulnerable but to get shot down and so on, or the whole song would be the intro with Chris with that sort of political I'm never gonna pledge allegiance, and the end tear the whole system down. It feels like it could have been one or the other. So it's always been an interesting song to me in that they basically split the difference and decided to make it both a song about like personal relations and also about larger political issues. So yeah, let me know what you think of the tune. Other than that, I will see you next time.